Coming up on today's Next Fan Up podcast.
It's not easy when your quarterback keeps laying an egg.
And I thought that his performance last year with the duck egg laying Hodges at quarterback put him in the Coach of the Year conversation.
He is a decent man. He is a horrible quarterback.
If Smurfs were so good, they'd be ruling the world. They're not ruling the world. That's because they're Smurfs.
Neil, always a step too far, Neil. Always a step too far.
Your boys are back with the NFL preseason power rankings. Here we go.
That's how we start. Yeah, baby.
32 SuperFans.
Where do the reports come from? Did you get an initial?
One PodVader.
That's football.
Every angle of the NFL covered.
All that kind of stuff, I get it.
This,
no question about it,
is Next Fan Up.
We're going to unleash hell here in December.
It's just like the old days. Hello and welcome to another fantastic live edition of the Next Fan Up podcast. Hey everybody, PodVader here, live for me, not live for you, because it's a podcast, it can't be live. But it's been a lively conversation before we even started hitting the record button. And that's because it's all the regulars, quite honestly. It's a regular Thursday podcast. I can't promise that we'll be back here regularly on Thursdays, which is why you should be subscribed to the show or following the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pandora, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. Just click the subscribe button or whatever it is that you'll get our next episode automatically downloaded into your phone, ready for you whenever we release it. And I know it's been a long time. Special shout out to Doc, who I know is listening to us right now. Let me introduce you to the guys that I've got here with me. Oh, before I even introduce you to them, let me just tell you, as you can see through the title and the show description, we're talking power rankings today, the most accurate power rankings of the NFL teams, because hey, we had all of the SuperFans, all-ish of the SuperFans, ranked through their power rankings for the preseason. So we're going to be talking about every single team today from worst to first, according to the SuperFan power rankings. Now, let me introduce you to the SuperFans who are going to help me get through it all. And I will start with the guy who's been with me for every podcast that we've done so far in the offseason. That is our Eagles SuperFan, James. Hello, James.
Hey, Pod. For fans listening to this right after you listen to Pod's divisional breakdown, which I was on for all of them, yeah, totally disregard all that previous stuff you heard. A lot's happened since then.
I wouldn't say disregard completely, but
okay, outside of Kansas City and Baltimore, everything else might be wrong.
There's definitely a lot that has happened for sure. Our other guy who we haven't heard from in quite some time, he's calling in from across the pond. It is our Washington football team representative, Neil. Hello, Neil.
Hey, guys. I'm still struggling with the old WTF and the old WFT thing with our team. But, hey, as long as you COVID-idiots have got your face masks on, I'm ready to go.
Social distancing, always encouraged.
Do you think 2,000 miles across the pond is far enough away from you guys? I'm not quite sure.
That's a great question. One person that I'm sure it's not far enough for is our Cowboy superfan, Kevin. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, friends, family, and loved ones. I've missed you all. It's been too long. I'm happy to be back.
Did you say you're not happy or you are happy? I couldn't tell.
I'm very happy to be back.
That's good. That's good to know. We're happy to have you, Kevin.
Is that your very happy voice? Because if it is, I'd hate to hear your not very happy voice.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to hear your voice again. It's very sexy. I missed it.
Yeah, well, 50
Get a room, you two.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of sexy, perhaps it doesn't get any sexier than our next superfan. It is our Raiders superfan, now based in Las Vegas. The team is, not him. It's Monty. Hello, Monty.
Hey, guys. I am probably so bored and looking forward to any kind of a football season that I might be one of the only people watching the Hard Knocks this year.
Oh, God. You want to talk about boring and put you to sleep. Hard Knocks is the way to go, especially this season.
Good, so I'm not missing anything.
Oh, it's terrible.
Jared Goff is not a franchise anything.
Just,
ooh.
did Sean McVay throw a basketball at his dog? That's the only thing I've picked up from the whole thing.
Yeah,
So
he
the
did
only
that.
thing you remember, Neil, is when Sean McVay took his shirt off. That's a little bit too much information, buddy.
I don't
That was also
remember that.
episode 1. We've had 3 episodes, right? Yeah. It's terrible. It's quite boring.
Is it an even split, Jay, between the two teams? Would you say, or is it leaning more towards one?
I feel like the last episode was more about the Rams than it was the Chargers. But I do think that they're trying to do an even split. It's tough to tell. I feel like we get more like alone time with Anthony Lynn than we do with Sean McVay. But like I said, last episode, I feel like we had more Rams coverage than we did Chargers coverage. Good question, Neil. Honestly, it really doesn't matter because really the only coverage of that we're seeing is how these teams are handling the COVID situation. It's just a big advertisement for how the NFL is dealing with COVID.
And that stadium, man, that LA stadium looks awesome.
Yes, the last episode was all about the new LA stadium and how the Rams had a scrimmage inside it. And how they're, this rookie linebacker that they drafted in the 7th round calls Brett Favre Papa Favre because his dad is like best friends with him. But he's not even going to make the team, so who cares?
My God, that sounds dull.
There you go. What is not dull is a terrible transition, but it is things that are happening here besides COVID in the United States. And I just want to say that we're not going to spend too much time on it because, honestly, it deserves its own podcast with much more insightful comments and better transitions than the one I just gave it. But, we've talked about the racial injustices involved in the NFL specifically. And, I don't know what it's going to take, but what I saw happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin, even taking the legalities out of it and just putting it in as a human, I don't understand how you do that to another human being, just being a human. Never mind being a police officer and a black man. It doesn't make any sense to me. It probably never will. And, aliens get here already so that we can turn our hatred towards you.
Yeah, it's I got to say from across the pond, another depressing episode on the news last night. Seeing you guys going nuts with your guns as usual. It's you've got to cut that. You got to get rid of these. Sorry, I was going to swear there. But you got to get rid of these guns.
Your bobbies are carrying guns now too, Neil.
No, not in the same way you guys do. Not your standard policemen on the street don't know. No, they do in some parts of London, around airports and so, and around high security places, but. It's not. You won't find a gun here, in maybe Glasgow Airport in Scotland, the Edinburgh Airport. That's about it. There's no other guns than the police in this country, and just generally, we don't have guns. I don't know anybody who's got a gun. Got to be honest. But that's only part of the problem, of course, isn't it? The rest of it is we're still in this dreadful time in the world where we need to have things like Me Too and Black Lives Matter. Because it's a sad indictment on where we are as a society.
I think that's well said. But James, I'm going to give you the floor.
I'm going to try to keep my points as succinct as possible because, this does deserve its own podcast first and foremost. I live for the day where the NFL players, NFLPA, and everyone associated with them has the type of power that the NBA and players and their player association have, to where they can make a social outcry for justice and basically bring the entire league to a standstill. What the players in the NBA did is pretty much, and the WNBA, what they've done all summer in the midst of all of these killings that have been going on, not just Blake, Floyd, Breonna Taylor as well. Their voices have pretty much been at the forefront of the call for social justice. And I long for the day when the NFL players can attain that same power that they have to demand the owners, basically cripple them to the point of listening, opening, being vulnerable, being uncomfortable enough to do something to change. My second point has to deal with uncomfortable conversations with a black man hosted by Emmanuel Acho in his 2-part interview with Roger Goodell. While poignant in its attempt to put Roger in the forefront, to have him address everything that's happened in the past 4 years that basically was brought to the limelight by Colin Kaepernick, I felt it was too lenient on Roger. It didn't bring him to task. It didn't push him into a place of uncomfortability to directly address what had happened 4 years ago and how it's changing now. There was a lot of acquiescing to making Roger feel comfortable on the set. A lot of conversation around what he felt, what he didn't know, and just leaving it at that. To which I say, your league is 70 to 80% African American. How did you not know if you talk to these players, whether you talk to Kaepernick or not? And finally, just I've been at a point in the last month or two to where screaming in my head has been the norm of my daily life. Aside from just police brutality, social injustices, the history of racism in this country, if you're unaware, there are many programs that I suggest everyone look at on Netflix, Hulu, whatever streaming device you have, to see how things became the way they are, because this didn't just happen overnight. The systemic oppression that people of color, especially women, go through on a daily basis would drive any person insane. So being a person of color, when I tell you that every day I am met with something that makes me want to either scream, cry, fits of rage, is an understatement. We walk a razor's line on being ourselves and being non-threatening for the sake of others' comfortability, to the point that it is maddening. And until others understand, willingly want to understand, instead of just turning a blind eye and saying, well, this is an isolated incident, this never happened to anyone that I know, and just opening your minds to be receptive to what others are saying about what's going on, we will never move ahead properly.
It's really interesting, James, and you genuinely have my sympathy for what's going on in your head. And of course, being a middle-aged white man living in Scotland, I can't imagine what that's like, clearly. But just to lighten the mood slightly, what I would say is, with all those things going on in your head, all that misery that's happening in your life, plus on top of that, you've got to be an Eagles fan. It can't be easy.
Yes.
But I would.
We do have more Super Bowl victories in the last 20 years than you have playoff wins. So there's that.
I would throw in, though, I mean, I still go back to the fact that there's a lot of these people we want to change. I think they're too old to change, to be perfectly honest with you. I think where we need to be targeting as a society is education. Has to start with education. If we're going to do anything in our lives, James, we have to make sure that the next generation coming through have a different attitude towards their fellow human being.
Well, don't even get me started on how education is being handled during the age of COVID, because that's a whole nother podcast too.
It is, and Neil, you make a great point about education, because again, the education as far as the history of this country has been so washed over with so many brushes of just bland depravity.
Can I also say, James, sorry, I know you guys are living in a particular country in America and the issues there in America.
Not just America.
This is a worldwide situation. It's a worldwide issue. It has been since the dawn of time, and no doubt will be in various parts of the world for the next 100,000 years. Who knows? So it's if nothing else, don't feel you're suffering that misery alone. That's happening across the world.
Oh yeah.
I would also say I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that we think that the owners of NFL teams, and I don't know about the other sports teams, but NFL teams are particularly embroiled in racism. I think you'll generally find that billionaires treat everybody like regardless of your color of skin. Now, there may be particular instances where that you can highlight for towards the black community, but I do believe billionaires generally become billionaires because they treat all human beings in a certain way at times. So I'm not sure if that ire is directed correctly there, to be perfectly frank.
Well, I think more what James was getting to was the fact that the NBA stopped. The players all decided they weren't going to play. Now, I will say it's a much more effective protest if they actually don't get paid and they actually forfeited those games. But that's not the case. It's just getting rescheduled to a different date.
Right.
Similarly, I'll be interested to see how the tennis player, there's a tennis player, Naomi, is that her name?
Naomi Osaka.
Who is planning on not playing in her semifinal match. And I'll be curious to see if she takes a forfeit, which is much more.
That tournament was postponed.
Yeah. See, so quite honestly, the message kind of gets watered down unless there's an actual effect to that. Because I would love to walk away from my job for a day to protest this and to make a point, but I don't get paid and I get fired.
And here's the thing, Pod, and here's why those things will not happen for both the NBA players and Naomi Osaka, because the organizations running them understand that these are your top players. Right now, the NBA is in their, quote, restart playoffs, whatever you want to call it. I haven't watched many games, just a handful. They can't effectively finish up what they had planned during this restart without the players. Mm-hmm. You know, the 3 games they had scheduled the other night, all the teams, the first game was Milwaukee versus Orlando. When Milwaukee said they weren't coming out, I guess their rep and Orlando's rep, probably the players rep for each team, spoke to each other. And Orlando decided, okay, if you guys aren't playing, we aren't playing, because we're not going to put you out there like that. Once that got up to league offices, the league was like, okay, we're shutting down all the games. And then you turn to find out that the players from the remaining 4 teams that still had to play were also thinking about not playing. So when the Bucks and Magic players decided they weren't playing, the other players started having the same conversations.
Well, and LeBron just wants to cancel the season, which again, listen, I'm all in on social. Like, we need to get rid of the social injustice in the world, and we need to all stop thinking about things in a racially biased manner. But at the same time, I don't think. I understand where the message is coming from, and I understand the point. But if they decide to walk away, guess what? The unfortunate part of that is we just lived through a period where sports got taken away because they couldn't be played at all, no matter what. And they figured out a way to actually start playing again. Now, if you're going to walk away and just cancel the season, you want to know what's going to happen next season when you try to start playing again? People ain't coming back because they're going to get used to their life without sports. And it's
people will come back. People will come back as long as there's a form,
but not in the same numbers that they're at now. And honestly, the numbers are already lower than what they used to be.
Exactly, but it's not an end all be all. But understand, and I'm going to take it back even further. And while this was a comedic aspect, it's something that actually got conversation started. I don't know if you all remember the animated show The Boondocks was on several years ago. There was an episode called Return of the King, in which he rewrote the creator of the show rewrote history such that when Martin Luther King Jr. was shot, he didn't die. He just ended up in a coma for 40 some odd years. And he woke up and he saw how the Black community was acting and being treated in America. and he tried to give a rally speech. And basically at the end, he had enough. He had seen enough of everything that was going on as far as the injustices and the way people being treated and acting and everything. They said he was going to Canada. And the post-log from that was all of the African-American players in the NBA and the NFL immediately walked away from their sports, and it brought the economy to a standstill. And that's the type of power that the African-American players in both those leagues have. I feel like the NBA players have come to that resolution probably 5 to 10 years earlier than the NFL. And mostly because in the NFL, while it's the ultimate team sport, these players get paid in such a way that they're in competition with each other still. So there isn't that much unity as far as galvanizing all the players in the NFL to be on one accord, because it's always going to be this chip on their shoulder, or someone's going to put a chip on their shoulder to say, this guy who plays your position is getting paid more money than you, but you're better than him. And that's where we are with the NFL. And while the video that Dak and Zeke and who else am I forgetting? Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, all the other African-American players who made the video after George Floyd was killed and Breonna Taylor was killed and put that on Twitter, I felt that was at least a stepping stone in the right direction, but that was only about 9 to 12 players. Imagine if the best players for each of the teams did that, but we still have an underlying racial issue in the NFL at the most important position in the game, which is quarterback. And this is a day and age in which going into this season right now, at least a third of the starting quarterbacks in the league are African-American, which has never happened before at this point ever. So take that into account as well. We still look at quarterback as a leader of a football team, but we still have an old school way of thinking that a lot of general managers, scouts, personnel people believe that your quarterback still has to be a 6'2" white guy with a rocket arm. That's still the prototype. We're still convincing African-American quarterbacks coming from high school and college to change positions just so they can play on this level. So understand that and I don't want to get too deep, but there's still hurdles to get through before, like I said, the NFL players get to the point to where the NBA players are. And I'm not going to say all the racial issues of the NBA are like completely done and over with. They're not. But we still have problems. I mean, look at Neil's team, Washington. They're the first team to hire a black person as team president. No, this is the first black president of any team ever. Why are we still having first in some situations?
Is that true, or is it the first black president for the Washington football team? I think
this was league-wide. There have been general managers, VPs, other executives, but I don't think any other team president has been a person of color.
That just might be the semantics of the way that people describe the position. Because I would say the Ravens
Ozzie Smith was the general manager.
Ozzie, I know, but
it is good.
But he had the same role as what the team president. Essentially, he was doing the same.
But his title,
they didn't have a team president.
It is good that you point that out, though, James, because Washington has been at the forefront of racial equality for a long time in this league.
On the wrong side of it, unfortunately. The last team to integrate is one of the more egregious.
But the first team to have a black quarterback start for them in the Super Bowl.
We are looking for an Asian lesbian to take on some other teams just to round off.
I would dial it back there, Neil. Your history with the fair sex isn't going so well right now either. So let's.
No, it's not.
Also a problem with the Washington football team. All right. Yeah. Let's take this moment to reset. And let's get back to talking some football. Like we said, I think that's a very important conversation. And the reason why it is starting our podcast today is because it is of that importance. But we can literally do an entire hour and a half long podcast and still not have enough time to talk about that particular topic. And we are here to talk about power rankings. And as we do so, we welcome in Jordan, our Titan superfan. He has now joined us.
Hi, what's up, guys? I joined in the middle of all that, so that was interesting, but glad we're talking about all these things and definitely ready to talk about football or any other random things going on in the country that we want to talk about, that's cool too. But yeah, let's do it.
All right. So as I said at the top of the podcast, these are the most accurate power rankings of the NFL teams because we have way more voices than anybody else. I mean, all the other places, all they have is one guy who puts together the power rankings, and it's probably an intern, and he doesn't know anything about football. We have 32-ish super fans, and 12-ish of them completed their rankings. So we've got all sorts of, we've got standard deviation, we've got skew, we've got IQR. We have all sorts of wonderful statistics built into our power rankings to give you the most accurate power rankings of the NFL teams. These are obviously the preseason power rankings. We won't release another set of power rankings until after week 1 is played, assuming week 1 is played. And then we'll be doing this all season long. So you'll get an idea of exactly where your team ranks in regards to the other 32. I'm going to start here with the first tier of teams. And the worst team, according to our superfans at number 32, are the Cincinnati Bengals. 31, the Washington football team. 30, the New York Jets. 29, the Carolina Panthers. 28, the New York Giants. 27, the Miami Dolphins. And at 26, the Jacksonville Jaguars. With the exception of Miami and the Giants, all of these teams were ranked last by at least one superfan, which is why I'm releasing this bottom tier first. I do think with Cincinnati being ranked dead last, they deserve a little bit of time here. Despite their draft and bringing in Joe Burrow, I just don't see enough improvement from Cincinnati to move ahead of any of the other 31 teams. I didn't realize the hole was that big for them. Let's go with you, Monty. You've been quiet.
I don't know. I guess I'd start with a big name quarterback, and after the draft, I just think that Neil's team looks like they're a mess. I did not have Cincinnati at the bottom. I think they're, taking some steps. I know they did a little bit of moves on their offensive line. I just see a lot of, they're all the bottom feeders. I think the tier is right. I just, I'm expecting Cincinnati to at least play a little bit better than the Jacksonvilles, the Washingtons, and, some of those other teams. But, you're going from last year, you got to start somewhere, and the Bengals were the first team on the clock, so it's not like they've got a lot to work with.
Kevin, 2 of your division mates are in this bottom tier.
Yeah, they are indeed. Makes me feel good, but I agree with Monty. I think that it's unfair to have the Bengals as the 32nd ranked team. I think they made a lot more improvements in the offseason than some other teams like the Jaguars or, let's say, the Jets, for example. And due to COVID reasons, and the Jets lost C.J. Mosley, they traded Jamal Adams. So I think the Jets could have very well and rightfully deserved the 32nd place power ranking spot. I get where everyone's coming from with the Bengals, but I think they're trending in the right direction, whereas like the Jets are trending downward horribly. I know Neil still loves Sam Darnold for some odd reason, but yeah, Neil, your team's a mess too. The Giants have been a mess for the last 7 years. So I love to see that. I don't know. All those teams belong in that tier for sure, though.
Neil, yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk about your boyfriend there, Sam Darnold?
Darnold, well, I think we all know the reason that Darnold has struggled in his first 2 seasons in the league, and that's that
he sees ghosts.
Sorry,
he sees ghosts.
Well, I think if you asked any quarterback in the league at one time or other, they've all seen ghosts. That was a bit overblown, I think, and probably not fair that was actually televised. For the kid, but no, I think Adam Gase is the guy who's going to prove something there at that team, isn't he? He's working with limited talent, and he himself may also be a limited talent. So we'll have to see how they go. As for Washington, I think, well, Well, I'm going to throw it out there. I think you can look at the Giants and the Redskins. Sorry, I'm going to say that all season, haven't I? Giants and Washington, and you're going to look at the two quarterbacks, and we can go back to your discussion about racism. And I think James kind of touched upon it in part of what he said. If you look at the PFF score ratings for the quarterback of the Giants and Washington's quarterback, you'll see that they're almost identical, and yet we do all tend to love the 6'5" white All-American guy you'll take home to your daughter quarterback over the black quarterback who's even worse because he doesn't even have any athletic ability to play running back. I think there's an issue there that the league has to address, because I think Jones and Haskins are probably fairly similar, and I can see optimism for both of them. So we'll see how it goes. Washington's got a great defensive line. That's about it. I think really they've got obviously a top-class wide receiver as well. Otherwise, it's a rebuild, isn't it? I mean, you're looking at new coach, new offensive coordinator, new coaching across the board. So we'll see how that goes. But I think there's optimism there in Washington, which I don't see so much with Jacksonville, for example, and the Jets, and maybe one or two others, the Patriots, even the Dolphins.
We'll get to the Patriots.
I'll get to the Patriots.
So the Dolphins have optimism.
Well, that's your opinion, and you're entitled to being wrong as usual.
I want to address a couple of things that you brought up there.
Well, can I just say one more thing before you go on? I would just say that we're in the optimism season, aren't we? All the teams are the best they're ever going to be at this point. But do remind yourselves that actually, in reality, rookies rarely make a difference in their first year to the win totals.
No, that's very true, especially rookie quarterbacks on top of that. Yeah, remember the greatest rookie quarterback, Peyton Manning, even had a terrible, terrible year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh, he set the record for interceptions this rookie season.
Yeah.
There you go. The Daniel Jones thing. Daniel Jones actually finished in the top 5 in rushing yards for quarterbacks last season, which, whether that's says anything or not, does seem to show that he is a little bit more athletic than Dwayne Haskins. The quarterback on your team, Neil, that I'm most impressed with is the one whose leg looked like a bitten chicken wing at one point, and he almost died. And that being Alex Smith. The fact that he's back on the field is amazing.
He didn't almost die. He is back in the field, but he's not going to start for Washington. Certainly not initially in the season. I don't think he will either. I think obviously the story is a great one, but the focus in Washington is about Haskins, and I think there's more optimism. If you look at his last couple of starts before he got injured at the end of the season, he had, I think, 2 or 3 games starting in a row. He actually got better and better and showed optimism, certainly going forward. Seems to have done everything he needs to do. Obviously, it's a huge season for him because we just don't know. But I just don't buy the negativity around Haskins and the positivity around Jones based on what they did on the stat sheet and what they did in terms of their overall ratings. Because they're
both terrible. Quite honestly, they're both terrible. It's not that one is better than the other. They're both terrible.
Jay,
one has Saquon, though.
That's also not correct. They were both rookies who struggled, and I think, like somebody just mentioned there, Peyton Manning also looked absolutely terrible, as did Troy Aikman in the rookie years, just awful. So I think that's harsh. I think that sensationalism doesn't do you any favors, Jay.
One last point on these bottom feeder teams, James, and I probably should have led with this because we talked about this, and this is probably the one aspect of the preseason preview shows that we did that still holds up in this age of COVID and the way that this preseason is happening. Teams that have a lot of change, whether it's a coach or a quarterback or any sort of important position on the team, those teams are going to struggle a lot more than the teams that have continuity across the board. And so these teams, there's obviously a lot of change involved with many of them, with maybe the exception being the Giants, but they're just so terrible it won't even matter.
Absolutely. And I did take that into account when I ranked these teams, because there was a point to where after I got halfway through my rankings, I had to stop and start working from the bottom up instead of the top down. And it was easier for me to at least fill in those teams from the bottom up, so I knew who was left to figure out how to fill in the rest of my rankings. And this grouping of teams all deserve to be down there for one reason or another. COVID having a big part of that. The teams who have key players who are opting out of the season. And like you said, the changeover. I'm not going to dump on Washington any more than we already had. They've lost as far as I'm concerned, they've already lost their best running back because of his off the field issues. As far as Daniel Jones and his rushing yards, it's easy to do that when you have an offensive line that doesn't block. So not hard for him to be fifth amongst quarterbacks in rushing yards because he's pretty much running for his life if he doesn't get rid of the ball at the snap. All these teams, look, they are built for the future. Unfortunately, the future is not now. I mean, all of these teams have a young quarterback that they're trying to build around, whether it's Haskins, Tua, Jones, Burrow, Darnold even. But, you know, I'll be looking forward to what Neil says in year 4, because Darnold struggled so far because of mono in one season, seeing ghosts in his second season, COVID this season. So I don't know what the excuse is going to be next year, Neil. You might want to get that ready. I mean, these teams all deserve to be down here. There's no real, I don't know, like, I guess you could say the Giants would be the best of this group. Like someone already said, they have Saquon. And unfortunately, Saquon is just, by play on the field, I've said this before, not to say that from a talent standpoint, but just the way he's carrying the team is a second coming of Barry Sanders. They basically win or lose because of him. That's all I'm saying. But that line is trash, and they don't have much at quarterback, and Saquon is the only thing they have going on that offense, because if he doesn't play well, they don't win.
And the problem is for the Giants, by the time they become a good team, Saquon's going to be near the end of his career.
Or on another team. By the way, for as much as I've trashed the Washington football team and their offense, I'm actually very high on their defense. I think their defense, because their offense is so bad, the defense goes unnoticed. I think Washington, out of all these teams, has the best defense. Probably has a better defense than maybe even some of these other bottom half teams that we're going to be going over here.
Probably. They have a very solid front seven. I just wouldn't count on their secondary to do much of anything this year.
Yeah, I would cut that back to the front four. I think the linebackers, not so much.
All right, Jordan, I promise I'm coming to you first here on this next tier. The next tier starts at number 25 with the Chicago Bears. 24 is the Detroit Lions. 22 are the Oakland Raiders. Monty, you'll get second knock. And at 22, we have the Cleveland Browns. I think there are some teams here, Jordan, that might be a little unnoticed, and I would probably say Cleveland and Oakland. I think they might be a little bit lower than – I think they're going to end up – there are two teams I think that will be higher at the end of the season than they are currently.
Well, I mean, we all know that once Derek Carr goes down and Marcus Mariota comes in for Oakland, that they're just going to have an amazing season. But
oh my goodness gracious!
I think the problem is you guys are all ranking the Oakland Raiders, and you're right, they weren't that good last year. But this is the Las Vegas Raiders, and they are trending in the right direction. We can get to that later.
I got to update the spreadsheet because it still says Oakland on here.
Yeah, but I agree though about Cleveland. I think last year everybody thought Cleveland was like their sleeper team, and they didn't deliver. But mostly it was because their offensive line was just one of the worst units in football. And now they've completely, well, I won't say completely, but they've turned it around into it should be one of the better offensive lines. And I think that should make a big difference. So I do think the Browns will be better. I also think the Lions maybe could be better than what they are here. I think when Stafford was healthy last season, they were actually doing pretty good. And like once they were using Jeff Driscoll, of course, they were terrible again. But I think some of these teams do have potential to be better. I do think the Bears are probably terrible, but Well, maybe they'll put Foles in instead of Trubisky, and maybe they could do something. But yeah, these teams at least have some hope, whereas I think the tier below are pretty much completely hopeless.
Well, from everything I'm hearing, the Bears are still all in on Trubisky over Foles. And again, it's one of those you got to.
Foles is trash. You got lucky for one freaking year.
Well, and I think it again goes back to the COVID thing. You have to have some sort of continuity to have any sort of chance at real success this season. And Foles is different. He's coming into a different team.
Continuity is fine if you were a good team already.
Well, the Bears do have, we talked about defenses, the Bears have one of the best defenders in Khalil Mack. And
but you could
pretty strong defense behind him, too.
But you could also add that Washington has been, the continuity at Washington for years has been brilliant. They've been, rubbish. So COVID's probably a good thing. I'd rather have a completely fresh start. I don't want the continuity from last year. Thank you very much.
All right, Monty, tell us all why Las Vegas deserves to be higher.
Well, I think that what's the skew factor on that? Because I think that James and MJ put the Oakland Raiders down at like 29 or something, and that's the only reason why they're in this. They're definitely in that tier of teams that are going to be fighting for a wild card spot. They're not anywhere near the top of the division, but I mean, like we said on the preview show, their offense is going to be fine. I don't even know if, sorry, Jordan, but I don't know if Mariota's going to win the backup job. He's not been having the best preseason, training camp. But he's definitely not going to take over the starting job anytime soon. He'll be lucky if he can hang on to the backup job. But the Raiders just comes down to their defense. They got a lot of new pieces. They spent a little bit of money in free agency. They spent a little bit of draft capital. And then they brought in Rod Marinelli to help the defensive line. So I don't think they're going to be the bottom of the league.
Oh my God, you guys are screwed.
I think you guys are sleeping on Las Vegas. I think the Raiders are going to be right there for that 6 or 7 spot in the AFC, fighting for a wild card.
First of all, I have the Raiders at 25th, not 29. Big difference.
They should be closer to like 18.
We'll get into that.
Well, I had Vegas at 20. I mean, listen, the beauty of having as many SuperFans rank them as we should is that you do get this sort of variance in where they are. Cleveland got last place votes, which is a little surprising to me. Cleveland is not the worst team in the NFL by far.
It's not surprising considering how much they underachieved last year. And I think some of our fans are just bitter that they didn't at least play like a competent football team for the majority of the season. And while I don't blame them, it's still kind of wrong to give them last place votes. But yeah, Cleveland deserves to be in this tier as opposed to the next tier we'll cover, where they probably should be, because they have far too much talent and they haven't done anything with it since this talent has been amassed. Granted, 2 seasons starting for their quarterback, who's a knucklehead who likes to mouth off for, as far as I'm concerned, no real reason whatsoever when he hasn't done or proven anything in the league yet. But
hasn't done jack.
This is arguably the most talented team as far as a roster top to bottom in the NFL, and they were 7-9 last year.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Because Baker regressed so poorly. Speaking of seeing ghosts, Baker was seeing ghosts the whole year.
Surely it's coaching.
Well, Neil hit it on the head. Come on.
Well, I also believe that Baker. I mean, there was a thing before. I don't know, before coaches actually became really good of the sophomore slump. I believe Baker just hit a sophomore slump. And I think his new coach, and as you said, the talent around Baker is too good. The thing is if Baker doesn't improve this year, then we know Baker is trash and we can throw him out in the garbage.
Yeah. But he's going to get another pass because his third coach in 3 years. And remember,
they won't fire this coach.
Season. But remember the way he was playing at the end of his rookie season. Everyone's like, oh, my gosh, Kitchens has found the way to tap into Baker's talent. And where did all that happen last year when Kitchens was the coach? It's like from day one. And I'm sorry, Jordan, week 1 last season, there was no reason for, one, that game against Tennessee to be that high scoring. And 2, there was no reason for them to lose that game when Mariota was still the starter.
Oh, Mariota played like trash that game.
Exactly my point.
Mariota had one lucky completion and then like a 75-yard screen to Derrick Henry that boosted his stats, and then they had like 2 defensive touchdowns. It was ridiculous.
Well, the Browns,
Mariota was good.
It was just awful. So like we had Cameron Wake, who was like 50 years old, was getting sacks and safeties, and we were getting pick sixes. But like I said, I think the Browns have fixed that unit going into this year. But I mean, come on, we were just a much better team than them last year.
Before we dive fully into this next tier, this next team at 21 has got a little bit of an anomaly linked to it.
Wait, before we move forward, I do want to say this because I did mention about players opting out for the year because of various, reasons dealing with COVID. And we didn't really talk about them this much, probably because they don't need to be. But the Detroit Lions and Matthew Stafford, I'm surprised he didn't opt out this season, considering what his wife went through last year. She is in an at-risk category. And for him to not opt out this season is still somewhat puzzling to me. So I wish her the best of health. I hope everything's good with her and the rest of the family. But I don't know. It's still kind of a head scratcher that he didn't opt out.
Maybe they'll wipe down the football with, some Purell every play.
Wiping down footballs, huh? Are we talking about Tampa Bay next?
No, we are talking about a team that has a change of quarterback. And at 21, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, who received a last place vote, but also placed a second place vote from Jared, the crazy Giants super fan. My only guess on this is that he saw LAC and thought it was the Clippers and was like, oh, of course, the Clippers, they're second. Yeah. That makes sense.
Jared is out of control. He has been since day one.
The Chargers are nowhere near second. Now, the question I have for the group, and I'll pose this to you, Monty, since the Chargers are in your division, is do the Chargers belong in the tier with Arizona at 20, Denver at 19, the Rams at 18, Atlanta at 17, and Indy at 16? Or do they belong in the lower tiers, either the one that we just finished talking about with Cleveland to the Bears, or the bottom tier, Jacksonville to Cincinnati?
We can, talk about the Bolts however you want, like whether they're injury prone and all that kind of good stuff, but you got to love that defense. That defense is better than all the teams that you just said above them. That defense is legit. And then I like their head coach. So if Tyrod Taylor can keep the offense moving, they've got some talent. I mean, I don't think they're 29th. Whoever put them at 29 is throwing off the numbers, because they're definitely in the middle tier. They're going to be right around it in December, fighting for a playoff spot unless they all end up on the injury reserve report.
Well, PodVader and Justin ranked them at 30th, actually. So
horrible.
I'm totally down on the Chargers. I think the Chargers are a bottom team. I do not like the Chargers whatsoever. I don't like.
Luckily for us, the Bolts get to play against New England, and I think that defense is going to rough up your New England team, and it's going to be way closer, way better game than you think.
Well, considering the guy who held in Melvin Ingram, who is now apparently got his contract, and the nose who got a big contract, those two guys will be injured by the time the New England game happens. And then all we have to worry about is the slot corner from Denver and the free safety. We got no problems. The Chargers don't have a running back. The Chargers have nobody to run the rock. Austin Eckler's third down change of back. That's it.
Running back by committee. Eckler and Jackson will be just fine.
They've got two good wide receivers, but they don't have a complement to the two good wide receivers. But Hunter Henry will be injured by that New England. Hunter Henry will be injured before the second play of the first game.
The Patriots don't have any of those things either, and you have them ranked in the top 5.
Look, I will be honest here. I gave the Chargers a boost because they no longer have Phillip Rivers at quarterback, and I felt that alone made them better.
Finally, that is 100% accurate, James. Thank you.
So it doesn't matter whether it's Tyrod Taylor or the rookie they just drafted. I feel like between quarterback play. They took a step forward, and they got better at that position.
Damn, shots fired. I wonder what Ken thinks.
Well, I don't know. Let's jump into this next. So let's talk about Arizona real quick, because Arizona is the team everybody's hot on. Everybody thinks Arizona is going to take this huge step forward. I don't get it. I don't see it. I mean, other than DeAndre Hopkins, what other major change did Arizona make that's going to make them a possible playoff contender?
Before everyone else jumps in, Pod, I will say if we put you at quarterback and gave you Larry Fitzgerald and DeAndre Hopkins, I'm pretty sure you could win at least 50% of your games.
Interesting.
I don't think so. No disrespect, Pod.
I'm more of a short route, crossing pattern type of quarterback. I don't have a big arm, so yeah, I'm not sure about that. But I mean, we'll see. That offense is different enough that it's difficult to sort of see if there can be improvement on what they did last season. But really the biggest problem was Kyler Murray just got sacked too much.
I mean, let's be clear. If Smurfs were so good, they'd be ruling the world. They're not ruling the world. That's because they're Smurfs. And that Smurf that put a quarterback, he's going to get crushed at some point, and we can all move on.
Oh, wow.
I'm putting this tier together. Tennessee at 15. I'm sorry. Tennessee at 15. I'm not including them in this tier. Indy at 16, Atlanta at 17, the Rams at 18, Denver at 19, Arizona at 20. I'm calling this the probably ranked where they should be in the preseason rank, because all of these teams, I think, have the potential to be a playoff team, but they also have the potential to be a bad team.
Did you include Tennessee in that? No.
I did not include Tennessee in that.
Good.
And you're right, because we've seen this from these teams. Consistently inconsistent over the last couple of years. I mean, each of these teams has made the playoffs in the last 3 years at some point. And they've also missed the playoffs in the last 3 years, whether it be through turnover at key positions, injury, whatever have you. They just can't seem to find a stride to be consistently solid to good year in and year out, especially Atlanta and Indianapolis. Are probably the two leading this pack as far as I'm concerned. Atlanta is another team, far too much talent to not be playing at least 500 football. The offense, I feel like, underachieves, and the defense can't stay healthy. With the Colts, I feel like they'll get better the moment that Phillip Rivers is not the starting quarterback.
Well, I was gonna say, Jordan, are you part of the Phillip Rivers is going to be the biggest problem for the Indianapolis Colts bandwagon, or are you part of another group?
I'm not part of that group. I mean, I think, because that group is overrating Jacoby Brissett, who was really not that good. And Rivers, I think a lot of people like the narratives of just being like, this quarterback's bad or good, but a lot of times the offensive line matters. And like, he's literally going from one of the worst offensive lines to probably the best he's ever had. And that's like a significant jump. I don't know how good it'll be, but the Colts are at least, I mean, they have a strong roster. And if Rivers is competent, they're going to be in the wild card race, or in the division race, honestly. So I don't think Rivers is nearly as bad as people think he is. But and I also definitely don't think if they have Jacoby Brissett, they'll be 7-9. Like, they're not doing anything with Jacoby Brissett. I think Rivers gives him hope to go maybe like 10-6 or maybe 11-5.
And Monty, I agree with you. I think Denver's tier too high. I don't know why I mentioned Denver with all those other. I don't think Denver belongs in this tier.
Yeah, they won a few games to close out the season that didn't matter, where teams weren't really, once some teams check out, they check out, and just because they won a few games. I think Kyler Murray and Drew Lock, now defensive coordinators, got some tape on them and they can see what they're trying to do. I think that those younger quarterbacks are going to find 2020 to be a little bit more difficult than the way December of 2019 ended.
Not as fun as reading a blurb from crazy Giants fan Jared, but here we have from our Atlanta Dirty Bird himself, MJ, writing in about the Atlanta Falcons training camp report. Reports coming out of training camp for the Dirty Birds sound promising. Team is looking good and clicking together. A recent video on the team's Twitter account shows defensive backs being frustrated as they fail to stop Calvin Ridley. I do suspect there's going to be a lot of that for teams other than the Falcons. The cornerbacks being frustrated. He is making some very pretty acrobatic catches and making them look easy. You can clearly see how much work Calvin has put in this offseason after the flashy few seasons that Ridley has had. He just might get called elite this season. That might be a step too far.
That's a stretch. That's a stretch and a half.
Reports
Lamb's already better than him.
That might be a step too far. Reports coming out are also talking about how much praise the defense is getting from Dan Quinn. One player to spotlight is A.J. Terrell. He's been looking good in his one-on-one matchups against Calvin Ridley, not stopping him, but still looking good in his matchups, which is always a difficult thing to judge, by the way. He's also been holding his own against Julio Jones. The defense is looking pretty good based on reports coming out of training camp. The Dirty Birds declined on McKinley's fifth-year option, and that seems to have put some pep in his step. He's dropped down to 248, which should help him move around better and hopefully make better plays this year. Keanu Neal has dropped down to 212, which I don't think is going to be a good thing for a guy who gets injured all the time. So he can move around better as well. It's good to see him on the field looking healthy. Isaiah Oliver is looking a lot better in training camp as well. He's had some good pass breakups and is referring to Joe Witt Jr. as the smartest DB coach he has been around. How many DB coaches has Isaiah Oliver been around? All in all, I think the Dirty Birds
is Isaiah Oliver. That's what I want to know.
Season, assuming we have a season this year. I do want to touch on Julio Jones here real quick because it was something I saw in Good Morning Football, and I thought it was an apt comparison. And I hear a lot about the debate over who's the best wide receiver, Julio Jones or Michael Thomas, or maybe there's another guy, maybe DeAndre Hopkins involved in that. There's a lot of guys that you can have that conversation around, but specifically with Julio Jones and Michael Thomas, since they're in the same division, Julio's the guy that is boom or bust. He's the guy that's going to, that you might be able to contain to only 3 or 4 catches, but one of those 3 or 4 catches, he's going to make you look stupid. Michael Thomas is the guy that you can't stop no matter what. He's going to get his 9 catches for 150 yards, but ultimately, it's all like this little, dink and dunk type of work. Which wide receiver would you prefer? The guy that, goes out there and just, gets whatever he can, or the guy that's going to break it wide open and make things look flashy?
Well, at this stage of his career, you always want the guy who's going to be on the field, and Julio has struggled to stay on the field in the last 2 or 3 seasons. That'd be an issue for me. I also want the guy who's going to be double teamed, and I just don't know the stats there between the 2 players who gets double teamed the most.
How about you, Jordan?
I think it could really go either way. This is just like a matter of preference, I think. And probably just with his age, I'd probably rather have Michael Thomas. But, like I said, I think it's just a matter of preference and like what style you like better. But they're both obviously like very good.
Kevin, you brought up CeeDee Lamb in comparison to Calvin Ridley. Julio or Michael Thomas?
As Jordan said, it's just really a matter of preference. I think Julio is probably more talented and naturally gifted, but at this point in their careers, I'd probably take Michael Thomas just because he's younger, like Neil said, not as injury prone. But yeah, Julio is obviously more of a game breaker, but I think Michael Thomas he's just so consistent at this point in his career. It would be hard to pass on him.
James, your team begs for a wide receiver. Which would you prefer?
I'm gonna go with Michael Thomas, and just over the past 2 seasons, we've seen the various coverages thrown at him, and nothing's worked. Even the formations where he's literally the only receiver on the field, I've seen the Saints in 2 tight end, 2 backs, and Michael Thomas, and he's being bracketed coverage, safety over the top, hold secondary, watching him, and he still catches the ball with at least a yard of separation. No other receiver in the league does that on a consistent basis week in and week out. Not taking anything away from Julio Jones, wildly talented, but again, as earlier said, he's either boom or bust. He's going to have his 3 to 4 catches in one game and probably no more than 50 to 60 yards. In another game, he may have 7 to 8 catches for 125. So not to say that he's easily more containable, but I'm going to take the guy who's pretty much more consistent week in and week out.
Monty, I might as well let you have the last word here.
Oh, Michael Thomas, not close. Julio is getting a little banged up, a little up there in years, and Michael Thomas just broke the record for the most catches in the history of the world. So I think that's pretty easy.
All right, that brings us to the top half of our power rankings. And at number 15, as I had let the cat out of the bag, it's the Tennessee Titans, who were ranked as low as 24 and as high as 6. I am definitely high on the Tennessee Titans. I didn't rank them at 6, but I do have them in my top 10 at number 8. I think the Titans are better than 15, but, I can see where the deviation. I certainly don't think they're 24. They don't belong in any of the tiers below them currently.
Yeah, you're probably going to need an explanation on 24, but even 15, this team literally goes 9-7 every single season. That should automatically put us in the 10 to 12 range. 15 is not even playoffs. But, I look at these rankings and I'm like, did the last 10 years or 10 weeks of the season and playoffs just not happen? Was I just imagining that? Do people doing these rankings just think we still have Mariota instead of Tannehill? I'm not sure, but I don't know how you could have us. I don't know how we're 15.
Tannehill's regressing this year 100 million %.
Yeah, think about when you say regressing. You're saying, when you say someone regresses, that's because they did so good that it's unsustainable to repeat. So, when you say that he's going to regress, that's just because he had such a good season statistically that it's unsustainable. So that's not an insult, really. And even if he regresses, the defense is solid. You've got Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown, who are just studs. Our offense was right up there with Kansas City and Baltimore in terms of points and yards and explosive.
I wouldn't call A.J. Brown a stud, but he's pretty good.
Look at his stats. Look at him.
What, he had 4 catches in the playoffs?
He had almost 20 yards per catch during the season. As a rookie, he had over 1,000 yards on only 52 catches, which is insane. But that's fine.
Yeah, he's pretty good. He's a solid player.
I'm pretty sure the Titans could win the Super Bowl and they'll still be ranked 10th in our rankings. So this is nothing. This is just how it works.
Well, I will use your own words against you, Jordan. You've been talking about offensive lines, and your team took a hit on the offensive line this season.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so that's literally the only position that is not the same. And we have Dennis Kelly as a backup who's played many, many games for us the last few years. And we spent a first-round pick on offensive line. So it's not as though we're not dedicated to the position. Every starter on our offense this year was on our team last year. So I don't see why the offense is going to take some major step back. If anything, it should be better. It's Tannehill's whole – and we talk about how continuity matters. We have basically the same team, the same coaching. I don't see any reason we should step back as opposed to improve from last year. But,
well, Jordan, I'm going to present that to you right now. And as Pod, as I discussed on his game-by-game breakdown months ago when we did that, he had your squad going, I think, 12-4, winning the division. I was not that hot.
Jesus.
You did have them 12-4. Yeah, he did have them 12-4. So I don't see them doing quite.
No, I'm going to it right now. I'll tell you exactly I had them at.
I think he did.
Yes, 12-4, winning the division.
Division, right. So I don't see them playing that well. But my question, because you already brought it up, and I'm just going to jump in on it and beat this dead horse. Tannehill. Tannehill's play last year towards the end of the season was otherworldly, mainly because of play action. And my question to Pod then, which is my question to you now, is what happens when teams take away that play action, when they limit Derrick Henry because you're not going to take him completely out of the game, but limit him to where he's not as effective running for 20 to 30 yards a pop. They keep him under, say, around 80 yards a game, and the game has to be put on Tannehill's shoulders to where he can't rely on fooling the defense with run action, where he actually have to read the defense, find an open man, stand in the pocket at times 5, 6, 7 seconds, and find an open guy because, one, obviously he has no mobility. And two, we've seen his passing prowess under Gase in Miami. Not a guy I'm counting on to run for a first down on, like, say, 3rd and 8.
You really can. He used to be a wide receiver. He's actually I think he's going to regress a lot, but I will defend him on that point. He's actually pretty athletic.
I hear you, Kevin, but I want to hear Jordan's response on this one.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, in Week 9 last year against Kansas City, we were down by 10 in the fourth quarter. We came back and won. Against the Saints in Week 16, Derrick Henry sat out, and we should have won that game if not for a pass interference call that wasn't called. But we were going neck and neck with the Saints in the 30s with no Derrick Henry. I mean, play action is like the most effective, most efficient play in the NFL. So we just say, like, what if they just take away our best player and take away play action? Then we won't be any good. Like, okay, sure. What if you take away Patrick Mahomes? Then the Chiefs won't be good either. But I mean, I don't really understand. Tannehill proved last year that he can throw. And I mean, we have A.J. Brown and Jonnu Smith, who's one of the best tight ends after the catch. So, you know, I don't think it's that easy to say.
There he goes again.
And the play action is like, how are they going to do that? He's the most efficient, had the best passer rating on play action out of anyone in the NFL. So, like, good luck. If you're able to do that, then sure. But I think he proved that he could pass just fine in many games last season. So I don't even see that as a problem. You're basically just saying, what if everything we're good at, we're not good at anymore? And then I'll say, well, sure.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm asking. Because again, in Miami, where they had no running game when he was quarterback, they had to rely on him to throw the ball, and it wasn't pretty. So that's why I wasn't really high on him last year. And I'm still not high on him now because I kind of need to see, again, is my favorite word as far as all the football goes, consistency. I need to see it more than one.
Just watch our games and you'll see it. It's there.
Oh, I watched the games. And if it wasn't for Derrick Henry, you guys wouldn't be where you were last year.
Well,
and at some point,
he's still there. Wait, if it wasn't for Derrick Henry, but the thing is Derrick Henry is still there.
Yes. And that's my point. Like, can he win a game when Derrick Henry is not there? And by not there, I mean contained, not having an impact on the game. Can he do that consistently?
But even if Henry doesn't have an impact on the stat line and you sell out against the run, he's making an impact on the game. That makes it easier for Tannehill to go else on the field. You can't just say, what if Derrick Henry's not there?
I really like the way that the Titans are built. I don't think they rely on Henry, and I don't think they rely on Tannehill. I think they can cope with one or sometimes even both not playing so well. I like the offensive line. I don't think it's taken such a huge hit there. I think it'll be just fine. I think the defense. I think Tennessee as a team is underrated because they're not maybe in a big part of America where they get a lot of media attention. I think that probably suits them just fine. The one guy I'm really looking forward to seeing is Jeffrey Simmons, and I think that guy is an absolute difference maker on defense and potentially the next great defensive lineman in this league. And Jordan, you've probably seen more of him than I have, but I absolutely love that guy.
Oh, yeah.
Do you expect Tennessee to win the division, Neil?
No, I expect Houston to win the division just from Tennessee.
Me too. Best quarterback in the division.
Yeah, it won't be Houston. It'll be Tennessee or Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Rivers. Come on, Rivers.
I would really want to hear Jordan's view on Jeffrey Simmons if it matches up with mine because he's great.
Yeah, Jeffrey Simmons looked great. We didn't even think he was going to play last year. If you remember when he was drafted, he was coming off as well. So he was like on a snap count with a brace, and he was still making huge plays and getting a ton of push. So he did much better as a rookie than any of us saw. So I think any of us expected. So we're definitely excited for him. I mean, we traded away Jarrell Casey based on our confidence in Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah.
So
if the rest of you guys haven't seen this guy play, I mean, if you watch Tennessee, don't watch Henry or Tannehill or Brown. Watch that guy play. He is special.
My final point on this grouping is that no team quarterbacked by Phillip Rivers will win a division title. Carry on.
I mean, I hope you're right. That would be great.
I kind of had a feeling that these next few teams here, as we go from 15 to maybe 6, are going to have the most conversation. At number 13 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were ranked as low as 19, as high as 3, and I was not the one that ranked Tampa Bay at number 3. I've got them at number 5, though. I think they're a top 5 team. As a matter of fact, it is our good buddy No Dak Pirate who's got his own team ranked at number 3. Well, it was going to happen eventually.
Vernon Hargreaves would have a breakout season last year.
Listen, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are better than 13th. It's just
continuity matters.
You added 2 Hall of Famers to that team.
Okay. But you also talked earlier about
injuries,
the bottom
Gronk
having players that keep position being new to the team, and Tom Brady is one of those new players at arguably the most important position. And I wish I could have ranked them lower, but I mean, I ranked them where I ranked them.
James, I think what we'll see there is probably some exceptional play for maybe 5-6 weeks from the quarterback, and the other future Hall of Famer you mentioned there, Jay, in Gronkowski. But I think after that, I think age, injuries, and last season's form we saw from those players, or Gronkowski the year before, we'll catch up with them, and they'll. I'll be surprised to see them playing anywhere near top level by sort of week 12, week 13.
I'm more worried. I agree that I'm more worried about. By the way, I agree. I'm more worried about Gronk than I am about Brady.
Why are you worried about either of them?
But I'm really not worried about either of them because they're not on my team anymore. But in regards to Gronk, they can easily manage Gronk. They have quite possibly the best tight end core in the league with O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate right behind Gronk. So it's not like they're going to have to rely on Gronk 100% of the time. And also, let's not forget, they have 2 great wide receivers in Michael Evans and Chris Godwin on the outside. To me, this team, their issue was the number of turnovers that were created by their quarterback, part of the 30-30 club, and Brady's not throwing 30 interceptions. It's just not happening.
Let me take you into the level of a superstar athlete. I haven't played football for 6 months now. COVID, soccer was cancelled for 6 months, and I'm going to tell you, my knees felt great for last 5 or 6 months. Fantastic! It was like I had new knees. I played football on Monday night, and I can tell you, I can hardly walk after that one game. So there you go. That's an insight into how a professional athlete copes with injury.
So that's going to be Gronk, is what you're saying? Interesting.
That's going to be Gronk. First couple of games back, he's going to be like, Jesus, man, I'm going back to that fake wrestling thing.
Pod, 2 things here. One, I'm worried about Brady's. I won't say so much his health, but if he takes the wrong hit, and again, you can say this about any quarterback in the league. He takes the wrong hit, he misses multiple games. I don't have any confidence in the backups. So, and the other thing with Brady is
the real American Blaine Gabbert. How can you not have confidence in him?
Zero confidence. Yeah, it really is. And to add to that, it's hard to throw 30 interceptions with Tom Brady when he can't throw the ball more than 10 to 15 yards downfield.
Well, that was Tom Brady his entire career, but that's another.
And like you said, this is arguably the best 1-2 combination of wide receivers in the league. These guys are burners. They're deep threats. You know, you've got to take your shots and throw some bombs every now and then.
I completely agree.
Have that in them.
It's this synergy between the Arians and his offense and Brady and his style of offense. It's going to be fascinating to watch because they just don't mash, do they?
Nah, not at all. I was happy to see that Shady McCoy found a new home. So congratulations, Tampa.
Tampa Bay retirement home.
Yeah, seriously.
And I guess we're not going to have as much conversation as we're going to. I'm not going to go all on a limb for a team that I don't care about. I will, however, go out on a limb for this other team that's tied with this team. Interestingly enough, also at 13 is the New England Patriots, who are ranked as high as 7, as low as 29. I did not rank them at 7. I have the New England Patriots ranked at 6, 18. So I have them even lower than what the consensus rank has them, but not as low as you, Neil, who has them at 29. Defend.
Nice, Neil. Nice.
Well, I mean, let's remove the name New England Patriots and let's remove the name Bill Belichick.
Oh, so now we're not going to wait. So now we're not going to have Derrick Henry playing. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is, maybe I should change that. Let's forget New England's name. Let's say we've got Brady Belichick as coach. What have you got there? You've got a defense that's been decimated by losing arguably its second best, maybe even best player in Bubba Smith's son, and then you've got Patrick Chung is out. He's gone for the season. That's a spine of your defense there, Jay. I don't like your offensive line either with the guys who have stepped aside there. Injuries. And then, hey, quarterback. You've got a Stidham, a fourth-round pick who's never thrown the ball in anger and doesn't appear to have the confidence of the team as well as having an injury. And you're replacing him with Cam Newton, who, although I know that's Kevin's boy, but he's a player who has got to prove himself again. The last time we saw him, he was dreadful and he couldn't get a contract from the team that drafted him number 1 overall, and that tells you something. So you've got a Patriots team with, let's say, arguably one of the worst quarterback situations in the league. We know it's a quarterback league. Wide receiver group that's, Edelman and who else? I'm not quite sure. I just don't see where you're going to score points. I don't think your defense is going to be as good as it's been for so many years through some great coaching. By losing those players, linebacker is a huge position for you guys that have always been the stars of your defense, and losing Bubba's boy is a huge blow there. I just look at the offense and defense and think you are way worse on offense, and you are not going to be as good on defense. And I just see so many teams better. I see you as the worst team in the NFC East. AFC East, sorry.
The worst? Jesus.
Wow.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, allow me to retort.
Oh gosh!
In regards to losing,
everybody, relax.
In regards to losing Hightower and Chung as they stepped away due to COVID related issues, we do have Mr. Rolls Royce himself, Juwan Bentley, whom I know you love, stepping into that spot as the middle linebacker. Now, I don't think Juwan Bentley can pass cover. But Dante Hightower couldn't either. So I'm not too concerned there. He's definitely
the heart of that defense.
He definitely is going to be a big time thumper and a guy that I think is going to take a huge step forward this season. And he didn't get the opportunity to do that last season because you had Kyle Van Noy and Hightower and Jamie Collins as part of that linebacking crew. There just wasn't room for Juwan Bentley to get playing time with those 3 guys in there. At safety, they did draft a guy named Kyle Duggar. Now, I know a lot of you are like, who the hell is Kyle Duggar? But Neil, you know who Kyle Duggar is. And it doesn't matter that he played Division II football. The kid can flat out play. And he's been showing it in training camp. He has been part of the strength of that Patriots defense, which is their secondary. I would say quite possibly the best secondary in the league at this particular point in time, with Stephon Gilmore, the defensive player of the year, the standing defensive player of the year, J.C. Jackson, who doesn't get as much credit as he deserves as the second corner because Jason McCourty has got a bigger name to go with his twin brother, Devin McCourty, at free safety. And Jonathan Jones is the fastest player on the team and plays the nickel probably as well as any nickel corner that's out there in the league right now.
Jay, before you say anything else, let's just say you've made a very weak start, so come on, up your game.
How did I make a weak start? They've got the strongest secondary in the league with a linebacker. You were worried about Dante Hightower. They have a younger version of Dante Hightower and Juwan Bentley stepping into his role.
Yeah, I think you're missing a key point there with Chung and Hightower is that they are
their experience.
No, not the experience. They are coaches on the field. They are Belichick's on the field, and that takes time to develop that. It's
right. So you still have You still have Stephon Gilmore and Devin McCourty and Lawrence Guy, who's probably who'll be the center cog on that defensive line to be the coaches on the field. I'm not concerned about. Honestly, of all of your arguments, the defensive side of your argument was the weakest one. Now, on the offensive side, I will agree. You've got a center who missed all of last season with blood clots in his lungs during a time when there's a virus that attacks the lungs, and no backup center behind him. The right tackle who opted out due to COVID-related reasons. Now you've got this kid who you drafted last year who missed all of last year playing right tackle. The left tackle is still unproven in Isaiah Wynn. I'm not too sure he's even a tackle in the league at this particular point in time. Running back situation where you got a guy who you drafted in the first round who can't seem to stay on the field and doesn't play like a first round draft pick. And the quarterback situation, you're 100% right. The thing with Cam Newton is he is a highly inaccurate passer who now comes to a team that had one of the more accurate passers in the league. It's going to be a rough transition. And you're right. It's the worst wide receiving core in the league. It's Julian Edelman and who else? Because nobody else wants to step up, and their first round draft choice, N'Keal Harry, can't stay on the field because as soon as you just touch him with your pinky finger, the kid falls down and pretends he's hurt.
Just to be clear, Jay, I didn't say your defense was going to be terrible. I just said it won't be as good when you lose those 2-star players from it. It just won't be as good. It might be terrific still, but it won't be as good as it's been.
It's a top 5 defense.
No, I don't think it is.
Ooh. Put it on the board! There is top 5 defense.
I'm going to need you to not run with this one, Jay, because you guys are not a top 5 defense right now.
Yeah, that's quite right.
We're a top 5 defense.
Yeah, maybe in the AFC East.
Okay. Maybe on Madden, but you're not playing Madden. This is real life.
Yeah, in real life, they're a top 5 defense, and they'll show it.
Oh.
Now they do have some first place teams that they're going to play that will absolutely wreck them, but those teams are going to wreck everybody. So I'm not that concerned. They'll still end up in the top 5. All right, Mr. I'm going to take a shot at your top 5 defense comment. Let's see which comments I could take a shot at with the 12th ranked team, the Philadelphia Eagles.
May I ask you one more question, Jay? Sorry. Just wanted to say, where do you see yourself in the AFC East? First, second, third, or fourth?
Second. I don't see the Jets are terrible. They are the worst team in the AFC East by far. The Dolphins are making moves, but I don't see them with enough talent to surpass that top 5 defense of the New England Patriots. And we'll get to the Buffalo Bills, but the Buffalo Bills are the class of the AFC East right now.
Worst quarterback in the division, you guys?
That's also untrue. The worst quarterback in the division is in Miami.
No, possibly. Fitzpatrick.
And a rookie Tua.
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick he's the man. Can we stop insulting the guy every podcast?
You're right. He is a decent man. He is a horrible quarterback.
I love Fitzy.
All right, let's talk about Carson Wentz. Can he stay on the field for the entire season? And do the Eagles have enough weapons around him to get back?
Now they got Jalen Hurts
to the Super Bowl.
I don't know. The first question, yes, he did it last year. He played all 16 games for the first time since his rookie season. Unfortunately, his head hit the turf in the wild card game 2 minutes into the start of the first quarter, and we haven't seen him since. As far as weapons around him, I'm going to say cautiously there are weapons around him. I am not worried about tight end and running back. I feel that we're solid enough at those positions. You mentioned arguably best tight end groups in Tampa Bay. This is my argument, Ertz and Goddard. And as far as Miles Sanders and Clement and Boston Scott and yet to be named veteran that they probably will still bring in at some point, I'm comfortable with those 2 position groups. My concerns begin with the offensive line and end with the receiving core. We're going to lose. We lost Brandon Brooks, all-pro guard, to an Achilles. a couple of months ago.
That's amazing.
Re-signed Peters, and we're going to shift him over to guard to allow Dillard to round out at tackle. That's my concern, is Andre Dillard, because he didn't get many snaps last year when he was given, or let's put it this way, the snaps he was given last year, he didn't take advantage of the opportunity. So there's still some concern there. Don't be surprised if you see a lot of chip by the backs or tight ends on his side of the line when we line up. And as far as wide receiver, depth and health. If Jackson and Jeffrey can stay healthy, awesome. If they can't, expect to see a lot of guys off the street throughout the year, like you saw in the last 5 games of the season. As far as the defense goes, content with the defense.
Hold on, before you go to the defense, I have one question for you on the offensive side. Why are all the fantasy guys drooling over Miles Sanders? Because I don't see Miles Sanders being a huge fantasy impact.
Miles Sanders will get more touches this year. In his rookie season, he had, I believe, 800 yards rushing and another 500 to 600 yards receiving. He's a dual threat out of the backfield. He can be lined up at wide receiver as he got more comfortable in the offense. If you look at his numbers the second half of the season, I think he was pacing about 95 to 100 yards per game from scrimmage. He's a nightmare matchup. They're going to try to use him to be that mismatch type of guy. They want to do things with him that Carolina did last year with Christian McCaffrey. They believe, and it's not far-fetched, he could be the next back to go for the 1,000 season.
No, that's a bit of a stretch.
Not much.
Very much.
Our offense. Let's put it this way. We lose our 2 starting wide receivers. There's going to be a lot of targeting of Ertz and Goddard down the field, which means dinking and dunking to backs out of the backfield. That's more catches for Sanders, more screen passes.
I'm not saying Sanders is bad. I'm going to have him on my fantasy team, but 1,000 is a stretch.
Talk about your defense. How's your secondary doing?
Yeah, that's the worrisome part. We brought in Slay via trade, Nikhil Roby-Coleman, to play what I assume is going to be slot, though there are many pundits out there talking about he's going to be the second corner opposite of Slay. I don't see that. If he is, cool, but then I'm worried about the slot because they like Avonte Maddox at the slot. My concern lies with Douglas and Jones. Jones hasn't been healthy since he's been drafted, and Douglas has been wildly inconsistent playing corner. He has flashes of greatness, and there's other times where he looks like he's never played the sport before. Safety, I'm completely worried, and linebackers, I have no faith in. So, and
by the way, I liked how
line can carry the defense, then we're going to struggle.
I liked how Kevin gave you guff all while you were giving your report on the Eagles, but Neil stayed quiet and was just typing his in the chat. So, Neil, I allow you a chance to retort.
Please.
Oh.
Did we lose him?
Neil must have stepped aside for a moment. So, Kevin, go at it.
I mean, I think the Eagles. I mean, it's good. I didn't even know Brandon Brooks got injured. I mean, I don't wish injury upon everyone, but that's honestly the best news I've heard all day. But
oh gosh, thanks, Kevin. We'll get to your big injury shortly.
But yeah, I mean, the Eagles still have the ability to have a potent offense. I mean, if Jeffrey and Jackson can stay healthy, they're going to be problematic. I do think Miles Sanders is really good. I mean, he had a really good season last year for a rookie.
Injured.
I didn't mean to disrespect. Yeah, he was. There you are, Neil. He was a little. I did disrespect him a little bit. I didn't even think it was disrespectful. Going 1,000, it's only happened three times. He's not going to do that. He's not going to come anywhere close to doing that. But your defense, yeah, as you mentioned, has a lot of holes in it for the Cowboys to take advantage of specifically. But But fortunately for you, the rest of the offenses in the division aren't very capable of doing much, so you might get away with it for a little bit. But, I mean, the Eagles are still going to be competitive, and, Carson Wentz, I think his injury concerns are overblown as well. He had that one bad injury. He played 16 games last year as you said, and but it's just the Cowboys division. You're honest, they have way more talent than anyone in the division, but we'll get back to that later when we get to the teams worthy of talking about in the power rankings.
All right, go ahead, Neil. Take shots at the Eagles.
No, I mean, I think they're probably, for me, the best team in the division on their day. If they can, if they can avoid the injury bug that seemed to have been has harnessed them over the last few years, it's been pretty tough going. I would ask James one question, and that is, last year I thought Fletcher Cox maybe wasn't quite as good as he's been in previous years, certainly on a consistency level, and I wonder if that was maybe just injury, or is he starting to slow down a little bit? I'm sure Kevin and I would be delighted if it was the latter.
Of course you would. No, he was playing injured I would say at least for about half the season. And it was various things. It was a foot injury, I think, early on in the season. Somewhere in the middle of the season, it was a shoulder. And I can't remember which game it was, but his shoulder got banged up. He wasn't really effective for the rest of that game or the next couple of weeks afterwards. But it was, it was basically just nagging injuries that most players go through throughout the year that you play through no matter what. And yeah, it did limit his effectiveness in some games. As far as the rest of the division is concerned, Kevin hit it on the head. There are two teams that pretty much I don't worry about, not only because since Doug Peterson's been coached, this team has been 14-4 against the division, and all four of those losses, unfortunately, have been to Kevin's Cowboys. So,
all right.
Yes, sir.
Number 11, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, which features the return of Big Ben Roethlisberger. Do we think the return of Ben Roethlisberger is enough to put Pittsburgh in this position? Because they weren't in this position last year, if I recall.
I carry one concern for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Roethlisberger's return, and that is, before he was injured, their form on the road was just horrendous. I mean, they couldn't win a game on the road, and Roethlisberger looked terrible. How is the year off affected that?
It's a great question. One that I don't know if has been answered, and I guess we'll find out. They were ranked as low as 17, as high as 4 in our power rankings. Who ranked them? 4. Let's find out.
I will say
I didn't. Correct. Of course, the Homer.
Of course,
the Homer. Homer ranked them.
I really wanted to rank them lower than this. I feel like 17 is probably where they should be, considering everything they went through last year. And while they piecemealed that defense together and threw something that resembled an offense on the field to be competitive in games, I have grave concerns. And first and foremost is Roethlisberger. After that, I'm worried about repeat production, or at least high-level production, from Connor and Smith-Schuster. These are two guys who pretty much should have been more productive in the absence of Ben.
Connor,
but when you have
last year,
Connor fell off, and Smith-Schuster couldn't garner any consistency because you had a revolving door at who's a worse quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan, you've unmuted yourself.
I mean, look, last year they had so many injuries. Ben was out, Connor missed time, Juju missed time, and they were still better than 17, or at least right around there. So I think they should definitely be higher than 17. I think 11's about right, and I think they have potential to be better just because, I mean, they were playing with Duck Hodges. You got to realize they still came so close to making the playoffs because their defense is arguably the best in the league last year, or at least right near that. And they do have weapons on offense. I mean, it's honestly amazing how good they did last year with all their injuries. So I think it's definitely fine to put them this high up, and I think they have potential to be better or worse if Roethlisberger is just old and injured. That's possible, but if he's back to how he was a couple of years ago, then, this could be a scary team.
He's not going to be back to how he was a couple of years ago because there's no Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell there anymore. So he's screwed.
It's going to be worse than Duck Hodges or Mason Rudolph. So he should be an improvement.
It's not easy when your quarterback keeps laying an egg.
Monty, it's time for you to become unsilent. Is Tomlin really a great coach, or is he just a mediocre coach?
I mean, he's been consistently good ever since he got into the league, and I thought that his performance last year with the duck egg laying Hodges at quarterback put him in the Coach of the Year conversation. So just the consistency overall for the Pittsburgh organization, I think you'd have to put him in the conversation as a good coach, if not great coach. Their defense was good last year. They definitely carried them along and put them in the conversation. They should be right in the battle for wild cards coming into December. I'm comfortable with this ranking.
Okay. And yes, Neil, we got the joke.
Oh, good.
And it's been properly marked for the T's, so you don't have to worry about it.
Marked.
We have a tie with the two ninth place teams, so we'll start with the one that's on my sheet first, and that's the Minnesota Vikings, featuring James' favorite quarterback and his actual favorite wide receiver from the draft, at least.
That they should have drafted.
I mean, Minnesota got as low as 25, as high as 7. Who ranked them 25th?
25? Yeah, Jared, 25. Probably.
No, It's not Jared. Oh, it is MJ. MJ's got them down here at 25.
25, it's a bit disrespectful.
Yeah.
Well, James, you are probably the lowest of all of us on here. You have them at 14.
Yeah, I mean, even though they lost Stephon Diggs and they drafted a wide receiver I really wanted in the draft, this team still has too much talent, again, to not warrant the way they played last year. And again, I still go back to the NFC Championship game in which the Eagles smacked them around like rag dolls, and for whatever reason, they decided to go a new direction at quarterback and keep everything the same as long as possible. I still feel they chose the wrong quarterback because he's not the answer. And he, as far as I'm concerned, it showed last year because games they won last year were pretty much on the back of Dalvin Cook, who entered a contract dispute, now is out of the dispute because he's back in camp. This is not going to bode well for them going forward. I doubt this team finishes at this point. Whatever chemistry Cousins had with his receiving core, he's going to have to reestablish it, if you will. But defensively, you have a defensive-minded coach over a unit that underperformed last year. So this is probably where they should be. I would probably put them. I would have put them a little lower, but I mean, 14 I think is accurate for them, despite the overall consensus of our rankings having them 10th. But
basically,
I mean, they're in that range as far as I'm concerned. 10 to 14 is probably right for them. But again, this is another team with talent across the board at various positions where they should be. This team, they finished second in the division, but record-wise, they should have been better than 9-7 is what they were last year.
Mm-hmm. Monty, are the Vikings a top 10 team or are they a top 20 team?
They're closer to top 10 than top 20. I think Green Bay won a lot of close games last year. I think the Vikings, remember they were up against salary cap, so they started losing some of their key defensive players, and they were still able to win the division last year on the back of Dalvin Cook. So if their defense keeps improving and Dalvin Cook plays 16 games, Captain Kirk's good enough to have them in the conversation to compete for that division. They definitely should be, 14 to 10, depending on how things go. I think the Vikings will be okay.
Here's another team that I think the same question can be asked. I'll pose it to you, Jordan, at number 9, tied with the Vikings. It's the Houston Texans. Are the Houston Texans a top 10 team or a top 20 team?
Gross.
I think they're a few spots too high here. I think they're like a 7 and 9, 8 and 8 team. I understand Watson is incredible, but their defense is a shell of itself. Obviously, they don't have Hopkins anymore. I think both Houston and Minnesota should probably be back a couple spots, but let's just say it this way. As a Titans fan, I'm more worried about the Colts than the Texans. So that's how I stand on that.
MJ has the Texans at 5. Somebody ranked them at 20th, and I'm still looking that up. It's Houston James. The homer went opposite on Houston.
I'm guessing it has something to do with that Hopkins trade.
Well, I mean,
they did get David Johnson.
I mean, that's really what it is. I think they've got a great quarterback that they're going to waste. And I think Neil has highlighted this situation before where you're going to waste the best years of your quarterback. You haven't built a team around him. You haven't given him enough weapons for him to succeed. And is it next year or the year after that his contract is due to be renegotiated? And then you lose the advantage you had in the salary cap with a quarterback on a rookie deal.
I'm going to buck the trend here a little bit. Maybe I don't like Bill O'Brien, the GM, but I actually think as a head coach, he's pretty good. I don't have too many concerns about losing Hopkins. Wide receivers don't mean much to me. I can't stand wide receivers, honestly. Overrated position, the most overrated position. And Tunsil, okay, they gave up a lot for Tunsil, but he's there, left tackle. That's an important position to try and protect. The star quarterback, of course, and I think Houston will be fine. Okay, they got David Johnson, but that wasn't the most important thing there in terms of being a bad
that was a joke.
They got his contract, which was even worse than the player. Yeah. The one guy I do like, though, I do like the second round pick from the draft this year, Ross Blacklock. I think he will certainly bolster that defensive line. He's a really good, solid, quality player there. I quite like Houston, and let's remember, Bill O'Brien has taken them to the playoffs. Now it's either 3 of the last 4 seasons or 4 of the last 5. I'm kind of guessing it's probably 3 of the last 4. So you can say they're wasting the talent, but he has got them to the playoffs on a consistent basis. And that one year where they failed was the year where they had all the chopping and changing at quarterback. As a Washington fan, I would take 3 out of 4 years in the playoffs. Hell, I would take 1 out of 4 years in the playoffs.
We can say what we want to about, the David Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins trade is ridiculous. They did try to sort of fill in the loss of DeAndre Hopkins with Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, and they still have obviously Kiki Kuti, Will Fuller, and Kenny Stills. The problem with all of those wide receivers is they can't stay healthy.
Cooks especially.
Very
well, between the 6 of them, you should be able to get 3 of them on the field at any one time.
You would hope, at the very least. Let's move now to the team ranked at number 8, and they were ranked as high as 6th, as low as 16, and they have Super Bowl aspirations every year. It is the Dallas Cowboys, Kevin.
Thank you. And who dares rank them at 16? That's just preposterous.
Who dared rank them at 6?
I didn't rank them at 6. I didn't rank any team anywhere. But thank you, Bud. This offense just has a chance to be super dynamic. CeeDee Lamb, by all accounts, has been very impressive in camp. The defense has had problems in the past, but we made the change. Leighton Vander Esch is going to Mike linebacker. Jalen Smith is switching to the Will linebacker, and all reports say that Jalen is excelling in that change, and I think the Will linebacker is more suited for his skill set. So I'm excited about that. Our secondary will probably be a problem again, unfortunately. we signed Clinton Dix, but all things considering, seems that Darian Thompson is outperforming him in training camp and may get the starting nod over him come week 1 next to Xavier Woods.
It won't be Earl
obviously
Thomas.
No, it won't be Earl Thomas, as much as I hope, but it won't be Earl Thomas. That's just a pipe dream, just like Jamal Adams was a pipe dream for us. But Gerald McCoy was a big blow. I was really excited for Gerald McCoy to be part of our defensive line, but that dream has come crashing down. But we still have Dontari Poe, still have DeMarcus Lawrence, Tyron Crawford, still have. Oh yeah, wait. Let's talk about Alden Smith. Alden Smith apparently is impressing everyone in camp. He's very versatile. Dak loves him, from what I hear. He's just been a menace in camp. I think our front 4 and our front 7 has a chance to be really super good. I thought that going into last year as well. Unfortunately, LVE was injured for the majority of the year, and Jalen Smith didn't play up to par after getting his new contract. But like I said, I think the position switch will do him very well, and hopefully LVE can stay healthy, which is a big if, I guess, much like Sean Lee. But
Kevin,
it all comes down to this.
Can I ask you one thing?
Yeah, what? Yeah.
At what point will you be changing the name of your outstanding podcast, Cowboys Campfire Chatter, to the Dallas Dumpster Fire Dialogue?
Dumpster Fire Dialogue. Well, first of all, I haven't recorded a podcast in that thing in about 6 months, in about 3 months, actually. So it probably could be switched to that name right now. But no, that name will never come apart because this team is winning the division for sure. Our offense is going to be super explosive. Ezekiel Elliott's going to get more touches as a receiver, which is always good.
Is he going to go 1,000?
Hold up, wait, Kevin.
No,
I hear
didn't
everything
say
you're
that.
saying. Kevin, I don't have anything disparaging to say about your team as far as its talent. It is arguably one of the most talented teams in the league. I wish I could bash them on any way, shape, or form as far as the talent they have, but I can't. So I will take a pop shot at this. They were supposed to win a division last year running away and basically found ways to give it directly to Philadelphia and hand wrap it to us in week 16 last year. Thank you for that, by the way.
Thankfully, Jason Garrett's no longer with us.
Okay, but I do want to ask this: how do you all avoid underachieving again this year? Because every time you guys fail to make at least a conference title game, it's a horrible season because of the talent you all have.
I mean, I agree with you there. We have underachieved a lot in recent years. I just don't see it happening this year. I think Jason Garrett's shtick was getting super old in Dallas, and he completely lost the locker room at the end of last year, which is why we lost that miserable game to you guys in Week 16, which is inexcusable considering the talent disparity that was on the field there. But I think Mike McCarthy, I know a lot of people don't like him as a head coach, but he's an upgrade over Jason Garrett for sure. Mike Nolan, thank God we got rid of Marinelli and what's his face, the guy from Seattle, Chris Richard. Apparently, Xavier Woods saying that there's going to be a lot more disguises in coverage. We're not going to be running that same vanilla defense and just hoping that we execute it properly throughout the game. There's going to be more disguises in coverage. And the addition of CeeDee Lamb, I just think, makes this offense extra explosive considering we have Amari Cooper and Gallup, who both were 1,000-yard receivers last year. I think Blake Jarwin, with Jason Witten gone, is going to finally have his chance to explode onto the scene. Every time he touches the ball last year, it seems like it was for 15-plus yards. So I honestly think the sky's the limit for this offense. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the number 1 ranked offense again in the league.
Who's your quarterback? So Dak Prescott is your quarterback this year. Is Andy Dalton your starter next year?
No, God, no. I hope not.
Is Dak Prescott your starter next year?
Yeah, Dak will be our starter next year. Just people make too much out of nothing.
What's the feeling with Dallas fans, Kevin, about the fact that there's no long-term deal done yet with the quarterback there? Is that an issue? Are they going to boo him at the first interception, or how is that going to be?
They're not going to boo him on the first interception. He doesn't throw that many interceptions to begin with. But I mean, I'm fine with it as long as they get their ish sorted out by next year, which they have plenty of time to do. But if I'm Dak Prescott also, like, you failed to make the playoffs last year, like, you should accept the franchise tag. And it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, look, Kirk Cousins did it magnificently, 2 franchise tags in a row, and then got, $90 million guaranteed. So, like, if he goes that route, good for him. But, like, I think Cowboys fans are okay with it. I'm personally not unfazed or unnerved by the Dak situation at all. If we have him unsigned at this time next year, of course, that'll be a huge concern, but I don't think that'll be an issue because I think he will prove all the doubters wrong, which there are still plenty of doubters on Dak. Just go on Twitter on any given day, and he's probably got the most haters in the league, just like because he's a Cowboys quarterback, just like Romo. May he rest in peace, even though he's still alive. I don't know, Neil. I just not fazed by the Dak contract situation. Maybe I'm just being too optimistic.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
At number 7 in the power rankings, we have the Green Bay Packers, who are ranked as high as 3 and as low as 18. Let's find, by the way, the person that ranked the Cowboys at 16 was Crazy Jared.
Of course, because he hates Speaking of Dak haters.
The Packers at 3 is Justin, the Seahawks fan. I am not falling into the Green Bay Packers trap. Every year, I think the Packers are going to do great. They do terrible. Every year, I think they're going to do terrible. They do better than terrible. Just the Packers, I feel like the Packers, we've misranked them only because they belong in that group of teams that they could be great or they could be the worst team in the league. Their inconsistency is mind-boggling, and it comes down to Aaron Rodgers needs to stay healthy.
I think they're the most overrated team that we have on these rankings. I mean, they were much more of a 9-win team last year. And talk about regression, their team is due for regression. They don't have many weapons outside of Devontae Adams. Rodgers really hasn't been as good the last couple of years, even when he has been healthy. They spent their first round pick on a quarterback instead of on a weapon that could help them. So I don't see why they're why they're 7. Honestly, you should double that ranking. That's what I would say.
Yeah, Jordan, I 100% agree with you. It's maybe the first time ever, but I 100% agree with you there.
I didn't know you were keeping track of how many times you agreed with everyone.
No, yeah, I have this little tally at home.
Okay, glad you got the whiteboard going. Have you seen AJ Dillon's legs, though? I mean, they're tremendous. That's amazing. I mean, to me, in a draft that featured the greatest wide receiving prospects in all of NFL history, and the hyperbole was done on purpose. The Green Bay Packers drafted a backup quarterback and a backup running back, 2 positions that they did not need players at. Now, whether they're trying to be super smart and plan for the future, I don't necessarily think they needed to add a wide receiver. I don't know why Marquez Valdez-Scantling seems to be overlooked by everyone. I don't know if that's because of the rise of Alan Lazard, but to me,
right, Alan Lazard.
to me, they didn't necessarily need to add a wide receiver, but they definitely needed. They definitely had other needs, specifically their offensive line, that Jordan Love and AJ Dillon cannot address as backups.
Yeah, you've touched on an excellent point there, Jay, and that is that we can look at the players and the draft picks and all the rest of it, but we kind of all have this feeling, don't we, that there's something not quite right in the locker room there between the star quarterback and the coaching staff and front office. There's definitely, I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that there's an issue there.
So.
But that will show itself on the field eventually.
Now, we've talked about the lack of linebackers. The one thing the Packers do not lack are linebackers. The Smith brothers lived up, I think, to their hype last season. And Christian Kirksey now on the inside, along with those two guys. The defense, at least from a linebacking standpoint, looks pretty good.
Top 5, do you think? Top 5?
No, definitely not a top 5 defense.
Green Bay's
go
kind
ahead.
of living off of last year, right, Jay? But who in that division would you put above them? I mean, there's question marks across the board. The NFC North is not as strong as it has been in the past. So I think that's kind of why it just left the Packers where they were last year, because they didn't know what else to do with them.
But then, Monty, you could argue, Monty, that they got slaughtered by the 49ers twice last year. And what have they done to make a difference there when they face them again?
We haven't gotten to the 49ers yet, so I'm believing that they're a pretty good team at this point.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, at number 6, we're going to get to the class of the AFC East in the Buffalo Bills, who are ranked as low as 21 and as high as 6th. So they're not higher than where they were ranked. Who is the outlier that put them down at 21? I'm going to guess it's either Crazy Jared or MJ or Neil out of spite. Let's find out. It's none of those. It's actually
you.
It's MJ. I'm sorry. I jumped the gun. MJ put Buffalo way down there at 21. The Bills, to me, have a very complete team. Rob will let you know, and Rob did write in, so I'll be reading something from Rob here quickly. He'll make sure that you don't forget the fact that the Bills were a top 10 defense over the last couple of years, and they've only continued to get better and added actual pieces to their defense, unlike what Green Bay did in the draft. They actually added edge rusher and AJ Epinenza and, threw in a couple of corners late in the draft to help build up the depth that the defense already has. To me, it's really about the maturation of Josh Allen, and can he become a more accurate quarterback than what he currently is? I don't care if he can throw the ball deep and be accurate deep. I just care if he can actually complete the ball to a wide receiver. And honestly, if we're going to talk about his bad accuracy on deep throws, well, they added Stephon Diggs, one of the best deep ball receivers in the league. So why are we worried about the Buffalo Bills? Why do we not think the Buffalo Bills are going to take that next step, other than they're the Buffalo Bills?
Just consistency, right? We've seen Josh Allen have some good games, but I've seen him throw balls in the dirt too. And maybe it's just because he's a young quarterback and learning how to get, learning the position at this level. But if Josh Allen can play more consistently, I think that the Bills are going to make some noise in the playoffs this year with that defense.
Neil, did you want to add? Yeah, sorry, just Monty covered it there. It's all about the quarterback, isn't it? It all lies at Allen's feet, really, or in his hand. If he can have a consistent season, that's the key. That's if he does, then they could do what Monty says and go far in the playoffs.
I mean, they could probably use some help at running back, but they did draft a running back in the 3rd round. So maybe that was enough to address that particular position. They also have Jake from State Farm as a backup. They drafted him. So that joke will never get old. And if it does, I'll still say it never gets old. All right. So that brings us to the team that we mentioned before. And it's the last of the quote unquote arguable teams, as I've labeled them, and that is at number 5, the San Francisco 49ers, who are ranked as high as 3rd and at worst 11th, which is still better than a lot of these other teams that we were talking about. But to me, the problem with San Francisco is they can't seem to keep a wide receiver healthy in a preseason that doesn't feature a lot of contact. That's what's got me the most concerned about San Francisco.
What about Nick Bosa? He's not just day to day; he's week to week, isn't he? Injury wise, that would be a blow.
That would be a blow, especially since they lost Solomon Thomas in free agency too. Not Solomon Thomas. Which It's the big
Buckner.
defensive tackle, Buckner.
They
Thank you.
traded-
Buckner.
traded
Yeah,
Buckner to
Buckner. They traded him to the
first round pick.
Yeah, they traded him.
Yeah. They did replace him with Javon Kinlaw, but
Yeah.
he's a rookie. Although, if you're going to be a rookie in this league, being a rookie defensive tackle is probably a good rookie to be.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they'll have a Super Bowl slump?
Well, that's the concern, right? The concern is that they're going to have a hangover. But I mean, if the way that I've looked at this COVID season is, again, the consistency amongst the coaching and the players, and they do have one of the more consistent. They return a large amount of starters. With Javon Kinlaw being a rookie, being thrust into a starting role, and Brandon Ayuk, who knows who their wide receivers are going to be. And that's sort of where I'm at. Like, currently I'm looking at our lads, which is what I use for the depth charts, and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk are listed as the starting wide receivers, and they're both injured currently, which means the next guys back would be Kendrick Bourne, Richie James, and maybe Dante Pettis, maybe Trent Taylor. Tavon Austin's in the conversation somewhere.
No, Tavon made his way to the 49ers.
Yeah. It's
good for him. Good for him.
I'd be concerned when George Kittle is the only possible option, and Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed shouldn't be playing. I don't know how he ended up.
I know, seriously, what's wrong with this guy? Does he want to die early?
Yeah.
But anyways, that might have been
You're
too
killing
hard.
a lot of people in this podcast today, Kevin. I've noticed this. At least the third person you talked about them being dead.
No one. I think that was the first one.
No, you said Tony Romo was may he rest in peace, even though he's not dead, and then you had something else earlier on. I'm listening.
Yeah, you're right. I did say that about Tony. You're right. Because
Neil's got his whiteboard out for how many people you're killing, Kevin. You're a serial killer at this point.
Oh boy, don't write it. That's why I'm in prison zone 1, right? Or 6.
Right.
No, you're not there anymore. Now you're in Graham Hills Park, wherever that is.
I don't know. That's a good question. I have no clue where that is.
You're nearby Pleasantville as well.
Interesting.
In your penthouse.
Yeah.
Our top 4 teams.
That's Brian's sign.
Our top 4 teams, I don't think are going to require a lot of conversation other than their actual ranking spot. But the lowest ranked out of them from any of our super fans was 8th. And all of these teams, well, actually, the 4th place and the 3rd place teams didn't get first place votes. But I think this is sort of the inarguable top 4, depending on how you would want to rank them. 4th is the Seattle Seahawks. 3rd is the New Orleans Saints. 2 is the Baltimore Ravens. And 1 is the Kansas City Chiefs. And quite honestly, with Kansas City, they were the team that was ranked 1 the most. Baltimore is the team that we as superfans had the most agreement on, which is quite interesting. But they did receive first place votes. So it seems like we're all in on Kansas City and Baltimore in the Super Bowl. Oh, wait, that can't happen. What do you say? I mean, from a consistency standpoint, these 4 teams all have very consistent coaching staffs, very consistent in regards to their starters. I think Seattle might be the one team. Everyone's really hot on Seattle this season.
Why?
But there's still a lot of change. There's been a lot of change in Seattle this offseason.
Yeah, may I be so bold to suggest that you got your tiers wrong? I maybe would put Seattle in the same tier as San Francisco, Buffalo, and have the top 3, really, not a top 4. I think if I was to choose one of those top 4 to drop out, it would easily be Seattle. But the top 3, I can see them all being really close to the Super Bowl, if not 2 of them being in the Super Bowl.
I think that's fair to say. I think the folks in Seattle are going to disagree with you, but I still think it's a fair comment. They're not top 4, but they're top 5.
If I was to ask you, Jay, of those top 3, Kansas City, Baltimore, New Orleans, which one is the most likely to not be a top 3 team come the end of the season?
Baltimore. And that just comes down to Lamar Jackson. Can he continue to play the way that he plays and not get injured?
I heard James make a funny noise. That may just be his Netflix backlog, but may not be.
James, I believe, is trying to do some work at the same time that he's participating in this podcast. Let's not rat out our good friend James. Get him in trouble. I think, though, it's funny that we all have the most agreement on Baltimore, but I do think that the one team is your Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, who's going to stop them other than themselves?
But then you could also argue that Baltimore are maybe not New Orleans, but Baltimore are a more rounded team that they could maybe absorb the loss of their quarterback better than the Chiefs could.
Could they? You think RG3 can do the same things that Lamar Jackson does?
I think the supporting cast, defense and the rest of the offense around Jackson is better than the Chiefs' supporting cast around Mahomes. Although clearly Mahomes is a better quarterback. Better quarterback than Jackson.
Oh yeah, without question.
I mean, I would say New Orleans, quite possibly. Mm-hmm. And I know you just took them out of the conversation, but I would put them right back into it. I think New Orleans is probably the most well-rounded team that can absorb a loss at a lot of positions.
Mm-hmm. Although they did lose, didn't they? They lost Breeze last year for 6 games, and it was Bridgewater who came in, wasn't it? It wasn't the reincarnated Steve Young.
No, but Teddy Two Gloves ended up getting himself a starting job in Carolina, and now you have the interception-prone Jameis Winston to learn behind Drew Brees, which I think is an interesting dynamic there in New Orleans. Of course, you also have Taysom Hill, the overhyped tight end quarterback wide receiver.
That's right. Yeah. I think that three pretty strong teams there, though. I think that's good going. Three good teams.
So my question to you guys is: Do we even need to watch the NFL this season if we all feel that confident about Kansas City, Baltimore, New Orleans?
Well, I hear. We said the same thing last year. I just can't quite remember what happened to Baltimore in the playoffs last year. Weren't we supposed to get the matchup?
It's well done, Jordan. It's well done. Of course, Kevin, your team, you would argue belongs in this top 3-4 conversation. I'm assuming.
No, I think they're on the same level with the Saints for sure. Or the Seahawks. I don't understand what all the rage is with the Seahawks right now. I really don't.
It's Russell. Yeah, it's Russellmania.
Russell. Yeah, Russell's good. I'll give him that. But,
okay, why do you hate Russell so much? What did he do to you? Because you've been bashing Russell for like the last 3 to 4 years, I feel, and it's like he robbed you or something. Did he come to your house and kill your dog? Did he steal your money? Like, what did Russell do to you that you despise him so much?
By the way, James coming off the top rope was phenomenal.
Look, James. Let me say here right now that I used to hate Russell way more back in 2014-15. I've come to just be more indifferent towards him, but I still wouldn't call him my favorite person. He's just a very boring man.
Is he on or off your death list?
Oh my God!
That's the key question, I think.
I mean, aside from being one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Oh yeah, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You can still hate the best.
But James, he is a little bit weird, isn't he? I mean, let's face it. I mean, he's a great quarterback, but that guy is just like, what was he called?
So weird. He's so boring.
But Kevin, I want you to understand that it was Hasselbeck, who was quarterback of that playoff game where Romo fumbled the snap on the field goal. Not Russell. It was Hasselbeck.
Yeah, I know. Don't bring it up, please.
All right. Well, that's our.
Romo would have gotten that first down too if Martin Gramaga could just shot block that motherfucker.
Those are our rankings 1 through 32. I'm sure you all agree with them out there. So make sure you send us those kudos via email, nextfanup@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at NFU Podcast. Facebook is a great place to have a conversation, facebook.com/NFU Podcast. We love to talk, as you can tell by the length of this podcast. We're not afraid to talk. That's for sure. Let's give some last words here. Monty, what do you got?
I don't think Dak Prescott is very exciting either if we're going to come down on Mr. Unlimited. I think that's crazy. Alden Smith is not the answer to any question that I've ever heard before. And other than that, I wish you guys all the best.
Wow. Damn. I mean, the Cowboys.
I almost want to end with Monty with the RKO out of nowhere. That was tremendous. Tremendous.
That was not tremendous. That was not tremendous at all.
Jordan, what do you got for us?
Let's see. I'll just say, you're talking about Ravens, Chiefs, and Saints. Last year, the Titans beat the Ravens, beat the Chiefs, and very nearly beat the Saints without Derrick Henry. But we'll just chill out here being ranked number 15. That's fine.
Another well done comment. Kevin.
I don't have any damn comments, The Cowboys are going to win the freaking Super Bowl, and Dak is not as boring as Russell, although he's a little bit boring. But at least he doesn't say go Hawks after the end of every freaking interview, which is aggravating as hell. Anyways.
You can catch those super hot takes in dumpster fire dialogues coming to an iPod near you.
Cowboys Campfire Chatter, ladies and gentlemen, on all great podcasting forums. When I decide to return to podcasting land, you can listen to them.
Kevin, talking about interesting characters, no mention of Randy Gregory today.
Oh, yeah, Randy. I hope he gets back on the field, but, for some reason he hasn't been reinstated yet. I don't know why.
Smith is taking him under his wing.
Alden taking him under his wing?
Oh, yeah.
Yo, I know Alden hasn't played in 4 years, but the guy's a menace. Trust me, he'll have at least 8 sacks.
To society.
No,
Jim Tom Sula called him a very he is a man of high character, according to Jim Tom Sula.
Yeah, great with guns.
Oh, come on. No, let's not.
He had one little faux pas at the airport, and we're gonna blame him for the rest of his life.
That's like saying
Neil, always a step too far, Neil. Always a step too far.
Not the same thing at all.
Oh my. All right. James, what do you got?
Final thoughts. The rankings are the rankings. I would say there's tons of fluidity between, say, 1 through 5, and then from 6 to 22 is pretty much the greatest area of fluidity, because those teams could be as high as where they are or as low as some others. So yeah, it's always tend to be a part of our rankings that are in flux, is that middle gap from 6 to 22, and probably will be the same this year, provided they play the entire season.
And I saved Neil for last because I know he's got some sort of snide comment ready to go.
No, I'm out of snide comments, but I can give you some breaking news. The Dolphins are trading Kalen Ballage, running back, to the Jets for a conditional late-round pick. So there we go. The Jets can move up our rankings, maybe in the top 15.
Yeah.
So the Jets now have Le'Veon Bell, Frank Gore, and Kalen Ballage. It's
going to be a lot of 20.
Ballage and is like 2.3 yards per carry.
22 personnel coming from the Jets this year.
Why would you give up anything for Kalen Ballage? That's the real question.
No, seriously.
I thought Kalen Ballage was released.
I think there was a report that they were going to release him, and they managed to weasel
to make the open market.
Adam Gase was like, no, let me pay you.
Act like you have no faith in what Adam Gase is trying to do over there.
Yeah,
I don't.
I think that
I'm not acting like it. I flat out don't have faith in Adam Gase.
No, I think the issue has been that Gase has been released from some mental institution.
All right. So breaking news here at the end of a 2-hour, 15-minute podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't promise you that our podcast will be shorter than this in future tries, but that's the beauty of podcasts. Hit the pause button, come back, listen to us at another time if you can't listen to us in one fell swoop. We just love talking football, and we're going to talk football all season long for as long as there's a season. And then if there's not a season, who knows what we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about how the grass grows, because my grass is dead right now. It's just been a terrible summer for grass here in the Northeast.
Kevin, how's your grass?
Oh, you mean the concrete next to my apartment is growing really well?
I don't think that's what Neil was asking.
That's not what Neil was asking about, Kevin, at all.
I know. I'm well aware. Neil, I don't appreciate you airing that kind of dirty laundry all over Twitter either.
Kofi Annan is listening quite intensely to these shows.
Oh, my gosh.
That's a throwback, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a huge throwback, yeah.
All right. For Neil, for Monty, for Jordan, for Kevin, for James, and for all the super fans, I am PodVader. I don't know who I'm going to sign out with today. If you haven't noticed, I've thrown a different guy at the end of the show every time. So it'll be a surprise for all of us. There you have it.
Dear friends and colleagues, saying goodbye is never easy. I believe we can all feel proud of what we have done together. And through it all, you have maintained your professionalism and commitment and remained true to the spirit of the Charter. That principle.
We go out, we hit people in the mouth.